Welcome to the magical journey beyond mediocrity, where the mystical and the practical become aligned. You're listening to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success, with your host, Seeker's Guide and coach, Kristen Lloyd. Kristen guides you through mindset shifts to increase your consciousness and live your best life. So let's leave mediocrity behind and step into your magical, magnificent life with Kristen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. I am your host and Seeker's Guide, Kristen Lloyd. Thank you for being here and tuning in for today's show. We are now accepting call-ins. If you want to jump on the call and get into the conversation, the number is 248-629-0921. Today, our very special guest is Maria Christina Hinton. Maria is a possibilitarian and prosperity coach and your go-to gal for shifting your mindset to true wealth and abundance. Maria works with entrepreneurs and successful business owners. She teaches her clients how to create sustainable businesses that not only reflect their deepest desires and values, but that leave a true positive impact on the world around them. As well as running her own successful business, Maria is passionate about philanthropy, believing that it is our duty to help others in the world. Thank you, Maria, for being here today.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I know I asked you a couple months ago, but I'm just like, I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, October's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this call. I mean, I put a hold on doing interviews for a while because I was just getting so busy. And then I was really starting to miss them. And then voila, you popped in my inbox. So it was perfect.
Yay. And happy Canadian Thanksgiving. I know that was yesterday.
Thank you. I know it's different times. I always get it confused. I have to remember American. It's a different time. It's in November, I think.
Yeah, totally. But I'm so glad that you said yes and that you could make it and that it all worked out. And so I'm very blessed and grateful that you are here. I love to start off these interviews with your journey to more. Every guest has their own individual journey to more. And everybody's more is different. So I've heard your story. It's amazing. It's inspiring. It's motivating. And so I would love for you to share with our audience, our listeners, your journey to more.
Yeah,
and how you got to where you are.
Yeah. Well, without like boring you all on the details, I'll do the Coles Notes.
It's so not boring. It's so not boring.
You know, it's so funny because I've told this story over and over again. And it's really interesting because I've taken a part of this story. It used to be part of my branding, and I had taken it recently out of my branding. And I'll tell you kind of why in a second. But so for those of you that don't know me, I basically my story is that I moved out at a very, very young age. I was born. I have to a very young mother. My mother was probably, I think, 13 or 14 when she had me. So you can imagine how that was. And so I was really just kind of surrounded by a ton of lack and just in a very toxic environment. And when I was around the age of like 12, 13, I started to realize that this was going to be my life if I did not find a way to leave or move away from it. And as much as I have a tremendous amount of respect and love for my mother, even though our relationship has been challenging at sometimes and at some points, I knew that I had to leave. And so I don't know how it happened or how she even agreed to let me, move across provinces. I moved about 3,000 kilometers away from everything that I knew. And I literally had $200 in my pocket, and I hopped on a Greyhound bus, and I rode on this bus for 52 hours to get to Toronto, Ontario, coming from Edmonton. And I remember thinking to myself that, man, like I'm off to a good start already, which is really crazy because at that age, you never most kids are not thinking about that stuff, right?
Right.
Most kids are thinking about like video games and like going to the movies with their friends. And here I was like, mapping out and planning out in my mind, okay, I got to find a job. I have a place to live. I'm going to enroll myself back into high school. Like I was having very adult thoughts at a very young age. And so, long story short, 2 years later, after I had moved here on my own, I actually had $18,000 in my bank account. And I talk about it a lot because it's something that is not very common for a 16-year-old. Right. But the reason why I talk about it is simply because I wasn't doing anything special except for so focused on the life that I wanted to create. I wasn't really focusing on the fact that I had to go to school full time. I wasn't focusing on the fact that I was working at McDonald's full time. On top of that, I was just focusing on where I wanted to go. And because I adopted that mindset at a very young age, it just became like really normal. And now, there's this so much buzz around the word, law of attraction and manifestation. Right. And I'm like all about it, but I don't know. At that age, I didn't know what the heck that meant. I thought, when I was laying in my bed, imagining the life that I wanted, that I was just daydreaming. And to be honest, it was actually an escape from reality because my environment was so toxic, was so negative. And when I talk about toxic and negative, it was filled with, verbal and physical abuse, drug abuse, just so many things that I witnessed as a child that people should just never have to experience, period. And so that was my way of escaping from reality. What I now know was that thoughts, I know you know this, thoughts become things. And so the things that I were imagining were literally unfolding, before me. And this is the reason why I have the life that I have. So on my journey for more, it really came down to, and still comes down to this very notion of trying to figure out what it is that my mission is like. Why am I here on this earth? Because I know it's not just to get up every day, work, go to the gym, go to sleep and do the same thing over again. I know that all of us have a mission, and our job is to figure out what that is. Mm-hmm. And so that's my journey to more of understanding what it is that I am meant to be in this world. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to influence others? And so it's where I am now.
Yeah. How did your in your journey to more, in your experience through going through the poverty and the cycle of abuse and all of that, you said you were looking toward the future and what could be. And one of the things that I've seen in some of the individuals that I work with is this lack of clarity, this just utter confusion of what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And because there is this foundation of disbelief, right? Mm-hmm. They struggle with gaining that clarity, and the confusion kind of masks it. And so, because you had that experience, but yet it seems like you had such a clarity and such a belief that you could, and you would, and you have gotten out of that. What advice would you have for someone who, for lack of a better word, like can't see the forest through the trees? Like they're in this situation and they want to see and believe that they can get out of it, but they're like on this little hamster wheel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say simplify. I think us humans make things really, really complicated. And as you know, there's just so much external noise out there. And I cannot say that my journey was seamless. There was a lot of bumps along the way. And what I started to realize was that I needed, in order to really, really have a running chance at having a good life, I needed to surround myself with good people. And so if you are an entrepreneur or just a person in general that, is really struggling kind of to find your way or to find that clarity of like, what is your purpose? What are you meant to do? I would really say getting quiet and still. We all have this internal compass called intuition, and it's just some people tend to flex that intuition muscle a lot more than other people. But even with my clients, they'll say, I don't have that intuition like you do. I'm like, actually, you're wrong. We all have it. It's just a matter of if we get quiet enough, still enough to listen to that voice inside, that guidance that we have. Too often people are seeking answers outside of themselves. Excuse me. Yep. And if you do that, you will always, 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 always be left confused and unfulfilled and in the exact same spot that you don't want to be. So it's really hard. It sounds simple, but it can be challenging to really quiet all that noise, especially, when we have friends, we have family members. I'm not saying they always have ill intention, but sometimes, they haven't experienced what's possible. So it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, right? So, I really believe that stillness and getting quiet and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that quiet can be really uncomfortable, is the best way to do that. And how I was able to do that was really getting into meditation. And I know that meditation is not for everyone, and you don't have to meditate, but to get into a spot where you can be alone, where you can be still, where you can look at the feelings and emotions that bubble up and be curious and ask yourself, well, why do I feel this way? Instead of trying to stuff all this emotion down and not feel, and then hop onto Facebook or watch TV, all these things that distract us from thinking and feeling. And so that stillness is really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I love is for people who struggle with meditation is go stick your feet in the grass for 30 seconds.
Yes.
Or sip, if you're drinking hot tea or coffee, sip it and spend 10 or 15 seconds coming up with an adjective for the taste, for the flavor, for the temperature, and just being present, because all of those things that you're talking about, the distractions, that's what people do to get away from the feelings. But the more that they connect with the feelings and they tap in, exactly what you're saying is where those answers are.
Absolutely. And there's so many different forms of addictions. I mean, with the obvious ones being, alcohol and drugs and sex addictions. But there's other addictions, which is being a workaholic and, you know what I mean? And so that was kind of one of my addictions. Was I had one speed, and I should say have, because it's something that I consistently am aware of and work on a day-to-day basis. But, it doesn't have to be things as obvious as alcohol and drugs, for shutting out, thinking and feeling. It could be very well just burying your head in your work. I know I did that for a very, very long time, and it's just as painful and traumatizing, right? And dangerous. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you were speaking about your journey where you had 18,000 in the bank account, you were working full time, you were going to school. And so a lot of people don't know, I followed you for a while because I'm a huge fan, but
thank you.
You were in the corporate world for a while. And so part of your journey was the transition from the corporate world into your own business. Tell us a little bit about that. And obviously this goes back to your one speed, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So I developed this one speed from a very young age, because being 14 and having to work full time and go to school full time, you can imagine obviously how really effective you have to be with time management. And so I became very efficient and ultimately was able to fit more things in a schedule than most humans can. But it continued on, which was a really destructive path for me of just being completely on 24/7. So when I stepped into the corporate world, you can imagine, the director that hired me was really happy because, in their eyes, all they see is this hustler. This person can move and she can move quickly. And so I spent quite a few years working in the finance field. So I ranged from working in accounts receivable and payable to working as an accountant to working as a financial planner. And a lot of people, when they hear this, they laugh because they're all like, what? Like that seems like the most isolated and like introverted job ever. And it really is. And so I remember being... And mind you, we're all self-employed too. So as a financial planner, I was self-employed. I got to make my own schedule, got to do kind of whatever I wanted. And I would find myself, I would say the last year of my time as a financial planner, crying in my car before I had to go to the office and being like, what the heck am I doing? Like, this is not for me. And I found that just even stepping into the building, I'm like big on energy. I can feel it. I can see it. And I would be like, this is not where I belong. And so I was forcing myself every single day to be in a place that I did not want to be, surrounded by people that I didn't want to be around. And it wasn't even that the people were bad. It's just the mentality that they had, the belief system that they had, was not one that I wanted to adopt. That's for sure. I'm a rule breaker by nature. So I was that person who definitely stood out like a sore thumb in the office. Everyone in the office would be wearing gray, black, and, blue, and I'd be wearing like a hot pink pencil skirt, right? So I would always stick out like a sore thumb, and everyone would be like, you don't belong here. Like, people would tell me, you don't belong here. Like, you don't belong here. You have too much personality. And so I had to sit down and have a conversation with my husband and be like, okay, I'm completely miserable. I hate my job. And it started to impact my personal life. It started to impact how I was showing up as a wife, how I was showing up as a mother. I was very frustrated and unhappy. And unfortunately, the people that are closest to us get the crappy end of the stick. They always are the person that has to deal with the messy Maria, the frustrated Maria, the irritated Maria. And that wasn't fair. So I was planning out my exit strategy, and I thought, you know what, I'm really, really good with money. But one thing that the corporate world misses, is completely oblivious to, is that the people on the other end that you're dealing with their money, they have fears, they have insecurities around money. The way that we're taught in the corporate world is just sales, right? Make the sale. And I would be always interested on how people actually felt about their money. And what I started to notice over time was that whether I had clients that had $5,000 in an investment account, or they had $2 million in an investment account, didn't matter. They both were completely controlled by their money. They were living in fear. And so that to me really fascinated me. And that's where I decided, okay, you know what, maybe I'm going to embark on this journey and build a program around money mindset and really understanding where a lot of our beliefs around money come from, which is obviously, it starts from childhood. Well, and that's where it began.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so amazing, because that is something that, that I've seen as well, is that, okay, there is this focus on loss. Like, they have the money, they've made the money, but yet there is this, not a hoarding, but an emotional, an emotional attachment to the lack or the fear of loss.
Yes, absolutely.
And so how did you come across becoming, what you call a possibilitarian and prosperity coach? And obviously this is part of that journey, but why do you call yourself a possibilitarian and prosperity coach? And how is that developed through this transition and through, let's say, that course that you created?
Yeah, absolutely. So Possibilitarian. Well, it's simple. I believe that anything is possible. I really truly believe that we all have the ability and the power to create the life that we want, whatever that may be, because for people, it's, for everyone, it's going to look vastly different. But I truly, truly believe that. And the reason why I believe it without any like second thought is simply because I have experienced it for myself. Statistically, being more, born from a mother who was a child herself and then surrounded with complete lack, that is exactly how my life should have turned out. I should have been on government assistance. I should have had my own children at young ages as well. So I really broke that cycle in my family line. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was easy, because it definitely was not easy. There was a tremendous amount of work. And when I talk about work, I'm talking about the doing of going to school and all that stuff, but also the work that I had to do for myself, the inner work. And that I think was the hardest part. And so because I've been able to create the life that I have, I really, really believe that we all have that potential as well. And that's my favorite part about getting to work with clients, is to sit down and listen to what they actually want out of life. And believe me, it's not always about money, even though they do go hand in hand. Now, the prosperity coach came about when I was trying to think of a title, because I deal with a lot of money mindset. A lot of my clients are really struggling in that area, but I didn't want to say money mindset coach, because it's prosperity and abundance is not just about money. Abundance can flow through you and to you in so many ways. It could be good quality friendships. It could be a great marriage. It could be a really thriving business. It could be honestly, there's so many different things that it can present itself. So a lot of time, especially in the online space, I find very often people sit there and all they talk about is money, how much money they made. And they never talk about actually how they feel, right? And so that's one of the things that I have been able to witness, in the finance field, of like being side by side with these clients that have a tremendous amount of money, but yet still feel completely unfulfilled. And so I call myself the prosperity coach, because I want to teach people what true prosperity means. And that all starts within.
Yeah. And I love that, because the words wealth and prosperity, I think a lot of people think on the surface that it is the numbers in your bank account.
Exactly. And it's not.
Right. And it's so much more about the feelings.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is, honestly, because I've had points in my life where I've had a tremendous amount of money, more money than I've ever had before, and yet completely unfulfilled. And that was me last year in my business in 2015. I had never in my life made as much money that I had last year, but I was a walking zombie. I was completely disconnected from myself. My relationships, I didn't really have any relationships because I was completely isolated and bombarded. Like my business was ruling my life, was taking over everything. And I was extremely, extremely sick for 16 weeks, the last 16 weeks of 2015. Where I had pneumonia, and I was so sick and coughing so much that I actually broke my ribs from just being so completely ill. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not abundance. This is not prosperity. Yeah, I have the money, but everything else around me is falling apart. And then that is literally when I knocked down the foundation of my business and rebuilt it.
I am a fan of the word hustle, but I think that there is a misinterpretation of what is hustle, because there's a difference between force and flow. And I know I've talked about this with other guests before, but it sounds like last year that you got to a point where maybe you were hustling more than you were flowing. Does that resonate?
Oh, yeah, totally. 100%. And I'm really big into energy work, and I talk a lot about masculine and feminine energy. And I had a ridiculous amount of masculine energy, hence why there was no flow. It was all hustle. And so, I mean, I actually wore that, and I think a lot of people do, as a badge of honor. Like the more amount of hours I can work means like I'm a true entrepreneur. And now I look at it, I'm like, no, that's a stupid entrepreneur. Like you don't need to work 20 hours a day in your business in order to have the things that you want. And that has been the hardest lesson for me to learn, because I have been conditioned to believe that in order to make really good money, I have to trade my time for it and make sure that it's an equal match. And so I found myself many, many times making obviously good money last year, and then feeling like I needed to overcompensate for it. And that really like put things into perspective for me, where I was like, no, it can be this easy. It's just, I'm making it hard. I'm making it complicated. And so, yeah, I mean, I am a hustler, and I believe in hustle, but like you said, there's a difference between forcing it and flowing.
Right. Would you say that, because I remember towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year, because I'm on your email list, one of the things I saw was that you were merging the masculine with the feminine energy, and the masculine energy is much more of that hustle, and the feminine energy is much more of that allowing and flow. And I'm an energy worker as well, so I get that. And that was like, oh, wow. And I had seen that. And I would say that I also tend to have an abundance of masculine energy. And over the last year or so have been really, it sounds counterintuitive. It's kind of funny, working to allow the feminine energy in, because I was also programmed like hustle, force. And I am also a fan of Gary Vee, who I watched a video of his yesterday where he said, you're not getting these big interviews because you've got to put in the work. You've got to do the work. And I do agree that you have to put in the work. Everybody's got to put in the work. You can't just ohm yourself into or meditate and just expect things to flow. You have to take action, right? The action is where it is. But there's also this inspired action and also asking for help. I'm a big believer in manifestation and aligning yourself with deliberate action. And so as you've transitioned your energy, I'm curious, because I've been hearing competing, and I'm not, asking you to go against Gary Vee, but I mean, there's this competing idea that like, you've got to put in the work, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And then on the other side, there's this allow. And it's so like, what do I do? Which path do I take? Which one is the yellow brick road?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I actually too, like Gary Vee, I find he's a little bit too much for me. And there's a few other, people that are very similar to him, male and female. And I honestly feel like that's setting people up for failure and disappointment. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the time, the people that we look up to in the industry that have been around the block a few times, what we forget to remember is that these people have a significant amount of resources around them, teams, money, all that sort of stuff. And so when you see them walking around in a car doing a live stream, they're on a beach doing a live stream, they're in the gym doing a live stream, we forget to keep in mind that they have teams doing a good portion of everything else for them. And so they are leveraging their time, right? And so that is the biggest misconception I think that is out there, is that, oh my God, I have to be and do everything like these people. And that is a track that I followed, and I know some of my peers have followed. And what ended up happening is us working about 18 to 20 hours a day. So the financial success that we had came at a significant cost. And I don't think anyone actually talks about that. Everyone sits there and, looks up at these people with their big sparkly eyes and think, oh my God, I'm going to do the exact same thing as them. But that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be able to do that on your own. You have to have a team around you to support you. And so as much as I love the term hustle, as much as I think that you do have to put in the time and effort and the work, there's no question about that. You also have to look at it and say, well, how can I make the most out of this? And that is with leveraging and delegating. There's a big piece of that. But no one talks about that. Everyone's just like, oh, I worked 18 hours. I'm like, oh, cool. 18 hours of what? Like when my clients tell me they work 12 hours a day, I'm like, on what exactly? Because a good portion of the time, they're working on things that do not matter, things that are not going to push them forward.
Right.
And it's actually a form of procrastination for them completing the things that they do know that matter. Perhaps it's out of fear of being rejected, or perhaps it's being, fear out of failing. But we all have the same amount of time in a day. And if I can run a business from working 5-6 hours a day compared to what I was doing last year, about 16 to 18 hours a day, I think I would take the 5 to 6 hours a day over. It's just about working smarter.
I completely agree. And I also love the team aspect, because budding entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, I was in that place. You can't necessarily afford a team. Right. And so as you build, then, I love virtual assistants, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
my favorite.
Right. So, because they're your team. They're the ones that help you to do the social media management. Because if you're sitting there posting on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, that could take up a good 3 or 4 hours a day.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Really focusing on what's most important, and like you said, managing your time. So, what would you say in your business have been your biggest success and or failures, and what have you learned from them?
Yeah. So the biggest success for me has been recently merging this humanitarian side of me and business, and having this solid belief that they can be integrated and work hand in hand. So I have a degree in social work. That's the first program that I actually took. And it's interesting because I love the work. For me, if it was just about the work and I didn't have to feed myself, I probably would have stayed in social work a lot longer. But I realized very quickly that actually, it's a limiting belief, but this is the belief I had when I was younger, that if I stayed in social work, that I was going to be broke and struggling forever. And the reason being is simply because of the places that I volunteered at, the people, my coworkers, they also too had that lack mentality. And in the social work field, you're also surrounded by a ton of lack, right? And so naturally, I took that on as a full-fledged belief. And so I went back to school, and I did my degree in accounting, specialized in accounting. So here I was like, okay, yeah, now I have this fancy degree and I'm going to get a good job, which I did, but it was boring. Like, it really did not feed my soul. And so the biggest success for me recently was knowing that I can actually do well by doing good in the world, and marry the two together. And that is how I have infused philanthropy into my business model. And I also encourage my clients to do the same as well. Just the reason simply is because if you can look outside of just lining your pockets and understand how much of an impact you can have on the people around you, and focus on that, the money will come. The money will truly come. And I always, and that's hard for a lot of people. That's really, really hard, especially when you need money. People are like, I can't think about other people when I need money, and I get it. But I feel a lot of time in especially in our industry, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel too often people are focusing about their own selfish needs, mainly just making as much money as they possibly can, instead of spreading a message and having a positive impact on someone's life.
Coming from a background in psychology, and I have a lot of friends that are social workers. My degree is not in social work, but it's in counseling and psychology. And so I have a lot of this similar background. And when I first graduated, I started in community mental health, and there was huge amounts of lack, and also in addiction work. And so it just lack. And so transitioning to the abundance mindset, the prosperity mindset, was extremely difficult because it was a huge shift. And then also seeing in the online world, like this 90K in 90 days model was a little disconcerting, just because it was so money focused and self-focused rather than giving focused. And although people are giving things, that's like the new marketing, so you give an opt-in, you give a free session, or you give something, which is awesome because you're getting people to taste your product. You're getting people to try you out so that they can like, know, and trust you. And there's this marketing model, which is awesome. But I think that and I know this happened for me probably over the last 2 years, is wait a minute. The focus is not about the money. The focus is on service. And it's exactly what you just said, but that was how I processed through it. Was, like you said, the money will come when you focus on service, when you focus on, and it's really going from fear to love, because the fear, right?
Yes.
The fear is lack. The love is abundance. And so as someone who has studied A Course in Miracles, and I'm a big fan of Gabby Bernstein and Marianne Williamson, and although we're talking about prosperity and possibility, that I think really you could bring that into it, because the fear is lack, and love is always abundant.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's you said it perfectly. And one of the things too for me that when I work with clients is I have like a pretty intense screening process. I'm really, really, really picky with the people that I work, because I had a lot of people last year coming to me wanting to work with me simply because of the amount of money that I made. And I would say, well, what I made doesn't guarantee. I want to be like
you too, so I want to work with you.
Right? Crazy. And I was like, no, it doesn't work that way. And so I moved away from people who were focused on specifically income and more focused on what income allows them to do. And so, because there's a difference. I mean, like, what's the point if you can't share that money, if you can't use that money for something good? So recently I had a client of mine. I just finished working with her last month, and she's just signed on again. But when I first met her, so she was a single mother. She has 2 kids. And she was really struggling. She had a pretty decent one-to-one business model, but we know that is it's something hard to scale without burning yourself out. So we were looking at ways to integrate somewhat passive income. And when I say passive income, I don't believe anything's passive. There's always some kind of energy exchange. So like
exactly
relatively passive compared to being tied down to clients all the time, especially because she had 2 young kids. And so I remember in the beginning of the process, we really focused a lot on not so much necessarily the amount of money that she wanted to make, but more importantly, how she wanted to feel in her business and what she would allow or love to have that money do for her. And a lot of it was being able to put her kids in private school. Obviously, it was pay off debt, but a good portion of it was being able to contribute to her local church, which was kind of cool because they had outreach programs for children who just basically their families were struggling and had trouble putting, just the basic essential things together for them, like food, shelter, clothing. And so when we went to set our goals, we set them with those ideas in mind. And so anytime she would really, and we worked together for about 4 months, and we had set some goals. And her first goal was to find a way to make $300 a day profit. And I was like, okay, totally doable. And so I remember having calls with her many times of her being really frustrated and crying because, again, those beliefs that we have really can mess us up. They are what throw us off time and time again of like, is this possible? Can it actually really be this easy? Or can I really have it all? Because a lot of times, I was telling my husband this yesterday, I had this mentality like, if I want this one thing, it has to come at the cost of this other thing. And it doesn't. It was a very, very crazy thought process that I had, but I had it. And many people have this too. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, why the hell not? Who says that? You can. And so a lot of our coaching time together is managing her thoughts and her emotions. 20% of it is just doing activity in order to get us those results. But 80% of our time was spent on her mindset, understanding where her thoughts and feelings are coming from. Because guess what? That 80% of our time is what produces, that 20% of her time of her doing the doing things is going to produce 80% of her results. So if she can't get on track, if she cannot get out of the bed in the morning because she's so fearful of not being able to make it, well, guess what? Nothing else matters. So a good portion of her time was spent on that. And after we finished, I was so proud of her because this chick has the hustle mode in her. So she knows when to pull forth that masculine energy. And that's the big piece that I teach, when to pull forth masculine energy and harness it. And then when to embrace that feminine energy and allow it, that more of that flow in your business, that creativity, working from a place of inspiration and compassion and understanding and love. And so by the time we were done, she blew past her goals. And I think she ended up with just over $700 a day profit she was making from her business, which is pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's really amazing. And it's changed her life. It's really changed her life. Well, imagine even $300 a day profit would change most people's life. But it has allowed her, and I was reading an email she sent me the other day, it allowed her possibility, allowed her the space and the freedom to do whatever it is that she wants. And so now she's decided to write because she has the means to allow her to be able to do that without that fear and panic. But she had to learn and understand that prosperity comes from inside. It's not about the stuff that you're doing. It's not about how many sales you have or how many people you have on your list. None of that matters if you cannot get in touch with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I love it.
And then be able to look around you and say, holy man, I am abundant. Look at all this great stuff that is around me. Why? Why don't people do that? It's because they're too busy watching other people, making stuff happen in their life, too busy to comparing themselves to them and feeling completely inadequate. And then they shut down before they even start.
I just did a video on comparisonitis last week and how, and there's that quote, what is it? Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle, or don't, but the thing is, and I was talking, I think last week with Val, who was on the show, who was talking about people renting boats, and they have champagne glasses and they've rented this boat for 2 hours to show this luxurious lifestyle that they're leading.
Yeah.
And it's a front, it's a cover.
Right.
And that's what people are buying into, and they're getting duped. And, I guess that's neither here nor there. But the thing is that when we see the external, there are these assumptions that are made psychologically about their internal, what's going on inside them because of the external. And so as people are guided to the external rewards, they're not recognizing, and this is what I say all the time is, and I know that you agree because you just said it, is prosperity, wealth, mindset. It's all, or transformation. It's an inside job.
Totally. And that changes your external world tremendously and quite rapidly because, in my world, there's no such thing as time. I know we're brought up that, yes, time, everything takes time. But I really believe that things can change at the drop of a dime. It doesn't have to take weeks, months, years when you are able to turn inwards and really reflect on what is going on. And I know exactly what Val is talking about, and I see it, and it's frustrating, and I actually feel really, really sorry for those people that get caught up in that web, because they are usually the people that are walking around that feel the most emptiness and are trying to fill a void with those material things. I think part of the reason why I am able to have the life that I have is because I've been stripped of everything. Material, I mean, I've had points in my life where I've had no food. And so when you take away even someone's basic necessities, such as food, shelter, safety, feeling safe.
Oh, yes.
There's nothing that anyone can take away from me now that would make me fall apart. I'm so much stronger because I have hit bottom. I know what it feels like to have nothing. That I'm not attached to any material things in life. I could lose my house tomorrow for whatever reason, and I would be okay with it because inside I'm so solid that I know that I would be able to rebuild my life back up again, because material stuff doesn't define me, but very often material defines people. And there's such a void in people's life that they're just consuming. They're just buying more and more and more. And I feel really sad when I see that. So I just always try to send that person, love and compassion, because I was once there too. I once walked around completely blind with a ton of fog in my eyes, and I'm just grateful every day that I can see.
Right. And I agree. And I think, there's this, I know that the first thing that popped up in my mind was, but money buys freedom.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say that, there are a lot of great things that money can buy, but if you're only focused on the external and not the inside wealth, like the gratitude and the abundance of love. And it always, this is making a full circle. People say at the end of your life, you're not going to say, I wish I worked more. I wish I put in more hours. Right. You're going to say, I wish I spent more time with my family. It's the relationships. It's that kind of thing. And so that makes so much sense because we crave connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe at the root of everything that from one person to another, that it's love. We all love one another, but there's so many things, like I said, that go on around us that create these barriers among people. And, but you're right. What people do truly crave is that connection of being part of something and belonging to something. But, the whole, we can flip the script too and talk about the fact that people are turned off by money, right? So that's another block that I see around money, is that desiring money and loving money is a gross and dirty thing. And that to be, poor or just average is more humbling than having wealth. And I used to believe that. When I look back at some of the beliefs that I had around money, holy smokes, it was insane. I was like, how am I going to dig myself out of this? It was just crazy, the beliefs that I had. And I was like, no wonder I'm struggling with money. No wonder I'm struggling. Like, I knew how to make it, but I never knew how to deal with it because I was always spending money on, like I said, filling that void because I didn't want to deal with the feelings and emotions that were bubbling up. So I'd be like, oh, let me go buy myself a shirt. I'll feel better. Oh, let's go on a vacation. And then those desires just get bigger and bigger because the void gets bigger and bigger. But I've learned to absolutely love money. And if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, I would have said to you, I'm content making $100,000. I'm happy. I'm happy if I can just make that. Whereas today, that is definitely not even an option in my mind. I want to make as much money as possible. My goals for February of 2017 is to hit $1 million in sales in my business. That's profit. Woo-hoo! That's the goal that's set. And I have no shame in saying that. And I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. That could be coworker, like peers, that could be friends of mine, that could be family members of mine. And I actually really don't care. And the reason why is because I know what it is that money is going to allow me to do. I know that money is going to allow me to give generously to causes that I really am passionate about. I know that money is going to allow me to have the freedom to actually just get to know myself more, be able to write my book, spend time with my children. What you do with that money is what matters. Is what matters. So if you're hoarding it, that's a problem, right? That's a real problem. And if you're taking that money in and just spending on material, but you're disconnected to yourself, that's a problem as well. So money is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a neutral thing. And what we choose to do with it makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love it. And, I wanted to go back to the philanthropy piece because I wanted to know, how have you incorporated that into your business? And you shared earlier why it's important to you and we both agree, serving is part of the bigger picture. That's giving, that's love, it's sharing. So how have you incorporated into your business model?
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch a bit about philanthropy and why it's important to me. The biggest piece of why it's important to me is because when I moved out on my own at 14, there was this lady that I met at church who had given me the biggest gift ever, which is the opportunity to have a home. So you can imagine most people are not really willing to rent an apartment to a 14-year-old. They're like, what is going on here? Like, they're confused by it. They're frightened by it. And this lady gave me an opportunity. And I lived with her for about 5 years. And because of her, it just restored my faith in humanity. But because of her, I was able to do some really amazing things in life, like be able to go to school and be able to afford it. And she helped, she'd drive me back and forth to work. She would pick me up from school. And I just want to give someone that same opportunity. I'm not looking to give a handout. I'm looking to give a hand up. And that is why I have incorporated it into my business model. So I infused philanthropy 2 different ways. So on my website, I have, it's called Promise of Potential Boutique. And there is a variety of different products that you can buy from my site. And 100% of the proceeds go to 2 foundations or 2 organizations that I support. So what I'm doing is I'm just leveraging my traffic. I'm leveraging, everything that I've done in my business to create traffic, either to my website or to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to point towards that boutique in order to generate sales. And so far, I think it's generated just under $25,000. And so the other, and that's in combination with me donating 5% of my consulting fees. So my coaching fees go to this pool of money as well. And then I take that money and I decide what I'm going to do with that money. So this time around, this money is going to be donated to build a well for an actual community in Africa. So yeah, it's being able to choose where that money is going to go, and it's such a great, that to me is success. That because that's fulfilling.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. That's amazing. And that, I was just thinking about how giving is just part of that circle. And I think, when you're only focused on receiving and not focused on giving, the cycle isn't complete. And if you're just focused on giving, you can get burnt out by not allowing yourself to receive. So it really is a cycle, and it's this circle. And I believe, again, like energy is cycles. Energy is, it's a cycle, and there's this circle, and you've got to have both parts in order for it to really function.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think, especially with women, we are really good givers and really bad receivers. I'm a horrible receiver. I have always been my whole life. Now I've just, over the last couple years, have learned to understand what receiving is all about. And it could be as little as things of like someone trying to buy you a coffee and you're like, no, it's okay. It's okay. Instead of welcoming in and being grateful for that. And that's exactly what was happening to me. I was funding a lot of these organizations out of my own pocket until a friend of mine, who's an intuitive, had said to me, it's like you're depleting your foundation. You have to learn how to receive. And when you can learn how to receive, then you're going to be able to give far more than what you're doing now. And I was like, what? What does that mean? And I swear I reflected on that for like months and months until I really understood this concept of, you got to be able to receive as well as give. It's this beautiful flow of energy. And thank God I've reached that point, because it's just good. It's such a good feeling.
It is. And actually, I think it was last week I was talking with another online coach who is in one of my peer groups, but it felt like she was offering me a free session. And at first I emotionally felt resistant to it because I felt guilty. And then I literally snapped myself and I said, it was like my own intuitive voice was coming up and saying, don't block this. Just allow yourself, be grateful. Just soak it up. If she's giving this to you, accept it, be open to it. And that was huge, because I think that was for me, and maybe this resonates for other people as well. When somebody gives you something, or even if it's not like, here, I'm giving this to you, but more of just a nonchalant, and you recognize, especially in the coaching world, like our time is precious, right?
Right.
So when someone was offering that to me, my first thing was, do I offer? Do I, and it was just like, I heard intuitively, just receive, just say thank you, just accept it.
Absolutely. And like knowing where to put that energy forth, because like I was in the beginning of my business giving out everything for free, was coaching people for free. And like I said, there was just such this imbalance, right? There was a lot of output, but no input coming in. And a lot of people will take advantage of that. And I can totally see how that would taint someone's wanting to give, especially if you've been like taken advantage of. But I think you just have to know where to put forth that energy, and you will always walk away feeling really, really great.
Right. And that's where that intuitive part comes in, that listening, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. So please tell everybody where to find you and how they can connect with you, and anything else that you have coming up this coming year, because I cannot believe we're actually running out of time, because this has been so awesome.
No, absolutely. I'm really thankful for you having me. But yeah, so for anyone listening that wants to check me out, you can head over to my website, mariahinton.ca. And I actually have one of my programs that used to sell like crazy. I just started giving it out for free. It's called the Feelings and Funds program. And the reason why I started giving it away for free is because I really feel like this is the foundation of running any successful or having a healthy relationship with money. It's regardless of whether you have a business or not. So if you have access to that, just head over to my site and you'll see it under the tab free training, and you can get started.
Awesome. And do you have a group, or where can people find you on Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have an actual Facebook group, but I do run a podcast called Sage Series. So if you type that in the search, Sage as in SAGE series, and we're talking all about this kind of stuff. We're talking about feminine, masculine energy. We're talking about mindset, you name it, we are talking about it. And so you guys can head over to that group. And we're inside there doing live streams all the time, asking questions. That's the best way to have any one-to-one interaction with me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, and then do you have any programs or anything coming up that you'd like to promote to our listeners?
Yeah. So right now I'm about to close down one of my signature programs, and it's really just working with me. It's a VIP intensive. So we would work together over a month period. I just know how much value that program has. It's unbelievable, but I will be removing it simply just because I'm moving on to a different journey in the beginning of 2017. So I want to make that available to as many people as possible, because I know that we can make some serious movement in a month's time. That's for sure.
I am so excited that you've shared this and that you've been here and you've shared so much wisdom. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on today.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And thank you everybody for listening. It's been another great show. I can't believe it's over already. To continue the conversation, hop on over to the Seekers group on Facebook, www.facebook.com/groups/mindset alchemy. And to grab your very own free Seekers Guide workbook, head on over to KristenLloyd.com and click on free gifts. Until next time, remember that you are meant for more, and keep seeking.
Thanks for tuning in to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. But the fun doesn't end here. Head over to KristenLloyd.com for your Seeker's Guide workbook filled with exercises to help you go from mediocre to magically magnificent.